you can balance flash and low levels of ambient light in the second part of the Red Riding Hood themed shoot.
Adorama TV presents Take and Make Great Photography with Gavin Hoey.
Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and you're watching Adorama TV, brought to you by Adorama, the camera store that has everything for us photographers. And today, well, you can see I'm not actually in my little studio. We're out in the woods because we're going to do a Red Riding Hood themed shoot, but outdoors. Now to do this, of course, I need a model, so let me introduce you to Fern. So hello, Fern.
Hey.
So Fern's joined me again, very brave, in this lovely room. It's lovely out here, isn't it? The UK is always lovely and sunny. And we're going to do a little shoot out here. We're going to mix in a bit of flash as well, so it's going to be an extension of our previous studio shoot. So with that in mind, let's get going. So for the first setup, we're going to do something fairly straightforward, a nice kind of head and shoulder shot out here. And I've got some flash gear that I'm going to use, but let's start without flash and just see what we get. Now the lighting today can best be described as flat, but let's take a shot. Now I'm going to use my Canon 70-200mm f2.8 lens. It's a gorgeous lens for portraits and gives some lovely creamy blurry backgrounds, especially when you shoot wide open at f2.8. Now I've got to watch my shutter speed here. I've got nothing other than the camera and the lens, no extra lighting, and at 100 ISO my shutter speed is very, very slow, even wide open at f2.8. So let's really bump up that ISO setting and we can go up to 400 ISO, keep my shutter speed up and my pictures sharper. That's great. So they work pretty well, but they are very flat and lack a little bit of drama. And that's where lighting can come in. We can add our own lighting into this scene to create our own rather more dramatic image. So for the lighting, I'm going to use the Rovelight 600. This is a studio powered flash. I mean, it's a very powerful flash, but the best bit about it is it's battery powered. So there's no cables, there's nothing here that's going to cause me to have any problems even shooting in the woods. We just need to get this in the right position. And of course, I need the little remote control to go on top of the camera to trigger the Rovelight. Okay, so let's work out what we need to do for exposure. Now, I'm going to start by taking an ambient meter reading. So I'm in aperture priority mode. I'm in my chosen aperture, f2.8, and I'm going to drop down to ISO 100. That's where I want to be. Now, if I take my ambient meter reading from here, my camera is telling me, wow, it's telling me 1/10 of a second. That's how dark it is down here, and it's the middle of the afternoon. It's crazy dark, but we can work with that. So that's 1/10 of a second. Now I'm actually going to switch to manual, and I'm going to deliberately underexpose the ambient light. So 1/10 of a second, f2.8, ISO 100 is the correct exposure. I'm going to go for 1/30 of a second. So that's stopping a bit underexposed. Let's just take a shot without the flash firing so you can see how that looks. As you can see, it's a little underexposed, but we still have detail in the background. Now we're going to add in the flash, but we need to work out how bright to make that flash. Remember, my target aperture is f2.8. So let's turn the flash meter on. So all I'm going to do is just pop the meter underneath Fern's chin or thereabouts, and we'll take a meter reading. So at the moment that's telling me f5.6. That's way too bright. I just need to turn this down 2 stops, that's 6 clicks, and then I can take another meter reading, and that's telling me f2.8. So I've hit my target aperture for my flash. My flash is producing f2.8 of light, and it's going to balance with the ambient, and hopefully that will just fill in the shadows and give me the shot I'm after. Okay, let's take the shot and find out. Okay, Fern, here we go. So that's lovely. Brilliant. And can you bring your hood up over your head for me? Okay, here we go. Okay, so there we go, we've got some great shots, and that shows you that by balancing the ambient light and the flash, you can get some great shots that give you the best of both, but give you ultimate control over the end result. Okay, so let's try something different. Let's move on, try another location. So we've moved to another location. We've got very different lighting here than inside of the woods, and I'm going to do a very slightly different way of working because the lighting here is bright enough that I might find that my shutter speed goes to my maximum sync speed of this camera, which is 1/200th of a second. So I'm going to jump into TV or shutter priority mode here on my Canon. My sync speed is 200th of a second, but I always work a little below that, so 1/160th of a second. And I'm just going to take a meter reading and let the camera tell me what aperture I can work at. And my camera is telling me f2.8. Now 160th, ISO 100 f2.8 would give me a perfect exposure on the background. I want to slightly underexpose, so I'm going to shoot at f4 instead. Okay, so switch to manual, 1/160th of a second, f4, ISO 100. That's locked in. Now what I need to do is to get the flash to flash at f4, so fern becomes correctly exposed and my background is slightly underexposed. We'll come and take a test reading, pointing the meter reading back at the flash. Okay, I'm actually on f5, so we can just drop that down just a little bit to f4. So my flash is producing exactly the right amount of light, and I should get the shot that I'm after. Beautiful. These are lovely. Fantastic shots, they really are. Okay, can I get just do a little spin? Okay, we'll see how that comes out. Okay, go for it. And yay, there you go. So we've moved around and we're going to do a different shot. Now we're going to do a wide shot. So I've switched out to my 24 to 105mm lens and I've changed the position of the light. We've now got it going much higher in the air to give a very different lighting look. I need to take an ambient meter reading first of all. So I'm going to go for the wide angle end of my lens to try and get a nice ambient feeling, and I'm going to choose where we might have to go up a bit on the ISO. Let's have a little go here. ISO 100 at the moment, f4, and that gives me an ambient reading. It's still about 1/10 of a second, so it's not as bad as it looks. So 1/10 of a second is my ambient. I'm going to switch to manual, and if I had 1/10 of a second at f4, well, that would be correctly exposed, and all of this would be correctly and nice and bright. But to make it a little bit more nightimey, I'm going to go from 1/10 of a second to 1/20th of a second. That's one stop. 1/20th of a second to 1/40th of a second. That's two stops. And from 1/40th, well, we're going to go to 1/60th. So that's 2.5 stops underexposed ambient light. So my target aperture is f4. Let's pop the little trigger back on. We need to make sure the flash produces f4 light that hits fern. So let's just get the flash meter and we'll take a meter reading. Here we go. So pop it underneath the chin and it's currently telling me f5.6, so that's a stop of light too much. We can just drop this down one stop, take a meter reading, and I'm getting f4. And in theory, all I have to do is press the button. That's the easy bit. Okay, let's take some shots and find out. Are you ready? Beautiful. That's really good. I'm just going to think about the background when I'm taking these shots. Just try and get a nice shot, nice background. Really good. So there you go. By combining the ambient light, the flash, changing your lens and changing your position, you can create a whole raft of different pictures. Now all I need to do is to get my favourite picture into Photoshop and do a little bit of processing, and we're going to do that right now.
Don't forget to check out Adorama's latest contest and your chance to win amazing prizes.
It's great to be back in the warm. It was freezing out there, and everybody who worked on that shoot did a brilliant job to disguise that fact. One thing I can't disguise, however, is the lighting on the shots, and I worked hard to try and get the lighting how I wanted it. Nonetheless, there's always a little bit of room for improvement inside of Photoshop, so let's see what we can do. So this is the shot from the very last setup we did, and although it's fine, I've got the exposure the way I want it, I'd like just a little bit more light round by Fern's feet. Now to do it, I'm going to use one of the features here inside of Camera Raw. It's called the Radial Filter. Now with the radial filter I can apply all sorts of things. Let's just change the exposure for now. And I'm going to add 1.5 stops of exposure. I just drag out a little circle like so. And I can move that around and I can pop it anywhere I want. It's worth noting that I've got my circle set so it's on the inside setting, otherwise it would have the opposite effect. I reckon we can go a little bit brighter than that, maybe up to about 2 stops. If I go too bright it starts to affect Fern's dress and we lose detail there, so I might need to balance up the exposure and the highlights just to bring some of that back as well. Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's click the OK button. And that gives me that little splash of light round by her feet. If I had a second light, I might have been able to add that in a lot easier in camera. But one thing that would have been very hard to add would be some rays of light, because I want to show that the light's coming in from the side, and if we'd had a smoke machine, we might have been able to do that. We didn't, so we couldn't. So I'm going to do it in Photoshop. Now to do it, first of all, I'm going to make a brand new empty layer. So let's go up to Layer, New, and Layer. Now my rays of light are going to be a paintbrush, and the brush I'm going to use I'm actually needing to download first of all, and fortunately I know exactly where it is because it's on my website. So it's a free paintbrush. If you go to my website gavtrain.com, search for Ray of Light brushes, you can download them for free, and then all you need to do is go back to Photoshop, unzip the paintbrushes, so here they are unzipped, and I'll install them into Photoshop by dragging them and dropping them not on the picture but on the bar along the top where I've got all of the titles there. Now that's installed the paintbrushes, so all I have to do now is go and choose one. Let's go find a brush from here and we'll go down to the bottom and we'll find the hidden away here. There we go. We'll just extend that down. I'm going to go with this one right there. So with one click of the brush in the middle of the frame, it adds in a ray of light, but of course I don't really want it there. I need to move it around slightly. And this is where we put it on its own separate layer, because now I can go to Edit, Free Transform, spin this around, and reposition it and resize it and reshape it exactly how I want it, like that. And not only that, but I can also go to the opacity for that layer and change it from 100%, and we'll just bring it down to around about 20-ish. No, that's 25. There we go, close enough. That'll do for me. And that just adds a hint of rays of light coming in without overpowering the whole scene. And there you go, that's my final picture completed. Now, if you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos from myself and the other amazing presenters here on Adorama TV, you know what you've got to do. You've got to click on it's this side, the subscribe button right there. I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching.
Great looking prints at low cost? Be sure to visit our easy-to-use online printing service. Adorama Pix has professionals who treat your images with the utmost care that you can count on. For a quick turnaround on photos, cards, or albums, use AdoramaPix.com.
Kristen McCoy with Red Carpet Fashionistas, and today we are in Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas, ironically enough at the Wedding Chapel in Planet Hollywood. The information that Che has to give us is awesome, because everyone from around the world is able to go to Las Vegas and go to like the best nightclub and get really dressed up and be fabulous. Where not everybody necessarily on a red carpet or can go to Los Angeles to go to a nightclub, but here in Vegas, everyone can come. And I'm sure everybody wants to get into the hottest nightclubs. Well, luckily we have someone, we have Che with us, and he does work all of the hottest nightclubs in Las Vegas, so he knows his stuff. Che, you consider yourself to be a VIP promotional host, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Can you kind of share with us how that works for you?
My job is to basically walk around, profile individuals and groups of people who are prospects to go inside and are dressing the right attire and hopefully aren't too tipsy because then they won't let you in. Basically, I profile people for our nightclubs.
I actually met Che one night where I was in LA, I went to a red carpet, I flew on a plane, came here, and I was walking around a casino like all dolled up, and he approached me and he's like, hey, do you want to, and I was going to this club, and I was like, oh, I don't know, and he's like, no, really, I'll hook you up. I was like, okay, and I ended up going in. Long story short, we became really good friends, and now whenever I come to Vegas, he's a great friend to have for helping me get into cool clubs that normal people can't really get into. You know a lot about men's fashion when it comes to club promotion, because obviously you are dressed really nicely whenever I see you, and you are, like you said, you profile people. Of course, our show is about looking good and fashion and all that kind of fun stuff. So from a men's point of view, what kind of tips and tricks can you give for going into clubs and stuff as a guy?
In Las Vegas, basically for the guys, there's more do's and don'ts for guys. Women have better fashion than men do, so there's usually never have any issues with women getting them into the club, pretty much no matter what they're wearing. There's more of a do's and don'ts for guys, like the don'ts, basically the tan hide boots, white shoes, any kind of like cargo pants or shorts, and then just like plain collared t-shirt, tees. Basically, you don't wear any combination of that whatsoever. Even if you're just like wearing jeans and a white tee, you're not guaranteed to get in.
It's key for men, especially with men's fashion, because obviously that's what we're all about on the show, is to just dress nice, just really honestly present yourself in a really nice manner. Don't come in looking like, a thug or someone who, roll off the couch off the street. Exactly. Basically,
men have two options. You wear designer jeans, or you wear like dress slacks, and then obviously you wear like nice shoes that have been polished, hopefully. Not too many scuffs. I'm just kidding. Sports jackets, you don't have to wear a tie all the time. If you're wearing a sports jacket, it's nice to wear the 70s style with the collars that are out and then your cufflinks that are flipped up. One of the styles that are coming back is it's like the retro paisley. If it's done in good taste, but it doesn't look like it came from the 70s, but more like our style. It's dressy and classy without having to be like in a suit and tie, and all tight. That's basically the minimum of what you need to wear in order to get into a club properly without having any issues or getting hung up or getting sent to the back of the line, so to speak.
Do you see that a lot of men do maybe perhaps show up in suits and ties, or where how does that work?
Not very many. Suits and ties mostly if you go to like a 5-star lounge type of place. They do because they specialize mostly in like bottle service. When you go to the nightclubs, unless there's a big convention or a venue out, you don't see a whole lot of people wearing suits and ties. They're mostly, they've got the jackets off, you know, the ties are a little bit unloose, you know what I mean? So it's kind of more of a laid back type of environment, and it's not really necessary if you're going into a nightclub. You know, plus it gets hot in there, so it's best just to be relaxed and with your attire and not having to wear your jacket, but still looking good at the same time. And ties, you know, shirts, you know, suits and ties without the jacket is perfect as well.
And it's interesting because everything that Che is sharing, it's the same way for the red carpets. You know, there are some red carpets where men have to show up wearing suit and tie, and that's just the way it is. It's like you just expect it. But then there's other ones which exactly what you were saying. You know, maybe just kind of a loose tie or kind of this look or that look. And sometimes you can wear like designer jeans, but you don't want the jeans to look really bad. And you know, it's very similar with men's fashion on the red carpet also. And that's really interesting, actually. It kind of goes over everything. One thing to remember as a male coming into like a hot Las Vegas nightclub is coming up to a host or knowing a host and really having that relationship, having the host walk you to the door. And you were mentioning tipping the host.
Key in Vegas, it's most important to have a host take you to the club. Most of the time it gets you in the front of the line, depending on what kind of venues are going on. Either you're going to pay to get into a club or you're not going to pay to get into a club. Yes. Basically, you need to find yourself a host in Vegas and always tip your host. Depending on who you're talking to, a lot of us work on commission and tips, and then some people are on salary. But generally, everybody accepts a good tip. Or if you want to get into other nightclubs, because if you just go into one nightclub for the evening, you can always go back and ask your host if they can put you on a guest list for another 4 or 5 star nightclub down the street, maybe for the next day or for the next night. And basically, you got someone on speed dial you can call up for all of your needs.
If you do show up and you do look really good, and let's say perhaps you don't have a host will actually find you. Whereas if you come and you look kind of sloppy and you're walking around, you're going to end up waiting in line for 3 hours to get into a hot club, and then you're going to have to pay a ton of money to get in. So that's another reason why, let's say maybe you don't have the best fashion sense, it might pay to go out and buy something before you go to a really, really nice Las Vegas club, just so you can meet someone like Che, who will pick you out and say, hey, do you want to come in? And so do you have any additional comments or anything else that you want to share with our viewers?
The key for gentlemen, if you just got a big group of guys, your best bet, honestly, is to buy a bottle service. Because then you get your own spot, and that's easier for you to have more, for them to have more fun in the club if you...
And easier to pick up on the ladies if you have a table with bottle service. Hint,
exactly. And if you don't do a bottle service, usually you have to pay to get into the nightclub. So even if you're on the guest list, they still might charge you to get on the guest list. But if you come with like a 1-to-1 ratio or like a 1-to-3 ratio, you know, 2 guys, 6 girls, or, you know, 2 and 2, then it's easier to be on the guest list and not have to pay to get in. And then even so, once you're on a guest list, you still need to find a host that's around the area so you get treated properly when you get to the front door. And they'll explain to you all the do's and don'ts for the club and while you're waiting in line.
And then obviously when it comes to women, and I'm sure Che, you'll probably agree with this, the sexier the better. I mean, when you're gonna go to a Las Vegas club, just go all out, have fun, wear your best dress, put on your most popular, fabulous jewelry, and do your hair and makeup. Why not? You're in Las Vegas. So as long as you look great, not only will people like Che be able to pick you out and be like, hey, do you want to come into this club VIP for free? But also, you're going to have fun, guys are going to check you out. It's going to be a lot of great times. So just do your best and really take the time to get ready before you go to a Las Vegas club, especially if it's a 4 or 5 star one. My name is Kristen McCoy with Red Carpet Fashionistas, coming to you live from Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas at the Wedding Chapel. And Che, since we're here, do you have any? Should we get married? I mean, we're here, right? It is Vegas.
Remember, we're not supposed to walk up there.
Oh yeah, that's true. They told us we couldn't actually go up there. Well, maybe next time. Maybe next time. So again, thanks for tuning in, and thank you so much, Che, for the interview. I really appreciate it. Have a great one.
show you how to shoot a silhouette photo with a simple one light setup.
Adorama TV presents Take and Make Great Photography with Gavin Hoey.
Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and you're watching Adorama TV, brought to you by Adorama, the camera store that has everything for us photographers. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create a silhouette using just one single light. Now, lights come with a whole bunch of different light modifiers, and we're going to try 4 different types of modifier to see what works best with a silhouette. We're going to try bare bulb, so no modifier at all. We're going to use a reflector, a grid, and a conical snoot. Now, I can't do this on my own, of course, and today I'm going to be working with Gemma. Do you want to say hello, Gemma? All we need to do is set the light up, get some balloons, and we'll take some shots. So to begin with, I'm going to start with no modifier on the flash whatsoever. I'm using the Streetlight 360 for this shoot, and it has a feature called bare bulb, where the whole of the light is exposed and light goes pretty much everywhere. Now this is going to give a silhouette because it's behind our subject. Light is going onto the background's going to be lit, but not so much light is falling onto Gemma, so Gemma's going to be darker and silhouette. That's the idea. Let's take a shot and see how it looks. So with that shot, it's okay, definitely a silhouette. The balloons are back illuminated, that's why they're there, they're semi-translucent, but the shadow in the foreground is not what I'm after at all. The light is coming forwards and up and to the sides. So to get some control to this shot, I'm going to add in a reflector. And this would be a little bit like using the wide angle end of your zoom if you were using a speedlight flash. Now I'm just going to pop this on the front of the Streetlight, and straight away you can imagine how this is going to work. The light's going to come forwards, but because this is solid, none of the light's going to go up or to the sides, and we're not going to get the spill back on Gemma that we had before. Let's take a picture and see how it looks. Yeah, and that's done exactly what I predicted. We've got a nice drop off at the edges, that shadow at the front has been eliminated, and yet the balloons are still rear illuminated. That looks pretty good. But would it be better with one of these? This is a honeycomb grid. It's a small series of honeycomb-shaped holes that push light in one direction. In theory, this should give us a much tighter circle of light and a very different look to the background on our silhouette. It slots into the reflector really simply. There we go. Just take the picture. So as you can see, that is a much tighter circle of light. Not sure it's quite what I'm after. So this time I'm going to add in the conical snoot. Now, in theory, this should be a very small circle of light. I think this will be way too small, but hey, you've got nothing to lose by trying. So let's just pop that in and take the shot. Okay, Gemma, here we go. And there we go, we get a very small circle of light, and it's not really that good for this particular type of silhouette. Remember, the flash distance, the background distance is remaining the same in every single shot, so it's simply the modifiers that are changing the look of the picture. And you might think the conical snoot would be useless, don't use it. But there's one way we can use it where we can still get a good shot. So what I'm going to do is, rather than having the light behind Gemma, and that's perfect place for it in this shot, although we will need to do some cloning to remove some of the legs in Photoshop, I'm going to take the light and put it over to the side. Not only that, but I'm going to raise it up a bit higher as well. So let's put the light up really high, like that. We'll angle it down a little bit. And we're just going to skim the light down the side of the background. So rather than being a circle of light, we should get a shaft of light. That's the idea. Let's try it out. Here we go. So it can be used to get a silhouette, but it's not quite the shot I'm after in this case. I think of the 4 that we tried, I like the second one with the standard reflector. So I'm going to put that back onto the light, put the light back behind Gemma, and then we're going to do a shoot. Okay, Gemma, are you ready? Let's do it. Keep looking over to the side. Okay, that's terrific. Well, there we go. We've got a load of silhouette shots there, plenty to choose from. So what I'm going to do now is to get my favorite picture into Photoshop, and we'll do a little bit of post-processing there as well. And we're going to do that right now. Don't forget to check out Adorama's latest contest and your chance to win amazing prizes. As always, I took all of my pictures in Camera Raw format. And as always, that means I need to do a little bit of work in Photoshop just to get the best out of the file. Let's have a little look. Now, this is the picture as it came off of the camera with a little bit of cropping done. And although it looks okay, it's not quite how I remember the picture on the LCD, on the camera. On the LCD, it was a lovely deep black silhouette, but here I can actually see detail in Gemma's arm and in Gemma's face. And in this case, I want them to be nice and solid and black. So to do that, I'm just going to go to the blacks slider and take the slider down into the minus area, and we'll keep going down. I reckon about there, about minus 70 should be pretty much perfect for this shot. So that's given a nice deep solid silhouette, but it's affected the whole picture. We now have much darker edges around here, and the balloons, well, they're not as bright as they were a minute ago, so we need to bring that back. Now I don't mind the dark edges, but those balloons, well, I can fix them fairly simply by changing tools, and I'm going to change this one here, the adjustment brush. Now the adjustment brush allows me to make small changes to small parts of the picture. So let's click it. I get a brand new panel, the adjustment brush panel, and I can choose to increase the exposure, for example, by dragging the exposure slider about 1.5 stops. Yeah, that should be fine. And then I just click on the balloons. It's like putting extra light into the balloons, because that's literally what we're doing. And I can change it even after I've painted. I can move the slider around to get it exactly how I want it. Maybe, you know, a little brighter and a little bit more saturation in there to really make those reds come out, and maybe a little bit of clarity in there too, just to give it an edge. Okay, I'm happy with that. So I'll click the OK button. We'll leave RAW behind, and I'll go into Photoshop. Now the reason I need to come back into Photoshop is there is one more thing that I need to do, and Photoshop is the best place to do it, and it was a problem that I knew I was going to have even whilst I was taking the pictures. It's the legs of the light stand. I needed the light behind Gemma. I wanted a nice even illumination behind her, and that meant having some form of lighting stand in the shot. Removing it, fortunately, isn't too tricky. So having a look down here, we can see the light stand quite clearly, and my tool of choice for this sort of work is this guy here, the spot healing brush. So I love the spot healing brush because all you need to do is just paint over the thing you want to remove, like that, and when you let go and you cross your fingers, it disappears. Now it might need a couple of clicks just to get it absolutely right, so don't be surprised if you need to just sort of click in a few times, but you can use it to remove any little minor blemishes as well. But big things like this, yep, paint over them, and there you go. Larger parts like this, now this is a bit more tricky because there's a little bit less for this tool to work with, and we have to kind of hope a little bit that it'll work. And don't be surprised if you need to go over this 2 or 3 times. Look at that, there we go. And eventually it'll fix it for you. And there you go, there is my final picture completed. Well, there you go. Shooting with balloons is great fun. The translucent nature of these works so well with the silhouette of the final picture. Now, if you want to see what we can do with more than one light and a set of balloons, then you need to watch my next video. And of course, the easiest way to do that is just to click on the subscribe button. I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching.
Do you want great looking prints at low cost? Be sure to visit our easy to use online printing service. Adorama Pix has professionals who treat your images with the utmost care that you can count on. For a quick turnaround on photos, cards, or albums, use AdoramaPix.com.